Okay, Erev Tov, everybody. Welcome to our Parshat Shavua. Pleasure to see everybody, and pleasure to welcome back Rabbi Aviner, who I told him that he spoke on Parshat Bereshit. So I told him, if you speak on Parshat Bereshit, you get Tazria, as has to go along with it, because not so many people like to sign up. But really want to thank you. Rabbi Aviner is the He's working as a shaliach here now in his 4th year. I think next year, please God, will be his 5th year, which already tells you something. They want him to stay. 5th year is the Bnei Kiva Schools, or Chaim Opanaz, Director of Judaic Advancement and Israel Guidance. He got smicha through YU and the Chief Rabbin of Israel. He's also a musmach. He's a Rabbi Eir, the special smicha. He learned in Eretz Chemda. And he has a bachelor, he has a degree in applied physics and medical engineering from Machon Lev, and an MA in science and halacha from Bar Ilan University. And it's a pleasure to welcome him. And I guess most importantly, I don't know if I've said this before, anytime I've introduced you, he's the father of 5 beautiful young daughters. The oldest, please God, is having her bat mitzvah in the not too distant future. So got his hands full, and a pleasure to welcome him and to be a neighbor of his here in Toronto. Vakasha, Rabbi Aviner.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Kalman. It's the only reason I really do this is for the introduction. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen if I can do that. There we go. Sorry, 1 second. I don't know why this is not showing.
You are co-host, so it should work.
Yeah, just the file wasn't there for some reason. Here we go. Okay. See my screen? Fantastic.
Yes. We see the screen. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So Parshat Tazria and the mitzvah of Brit Milah, of circumcision, it's like deja vu all over again. As we know, Brit Milah first appears in the Torah by Avram Avinu. As we have source number 1, Hashem says to Avram, you have to go ahead, you and all of your descendants should keep my brit. Zot briti, what is my brit? This is my covenant. Between me and you and your children after you. We have the Brit Milah, the mitzvah of Brit Milah is given to Avram. Yet very oddly, it appears in our Sidra, in our Parsha. It appears again at the very beginning, mamash smack in the middle of, we're talking about the dinim of the Yoledet, we have the mitzvah of Milah again. In source number 2, as we have in this week's Parsha, Vaydaber Adonai al Moshe lemor, Darel b'nei Yisrael lemor, Isha ki tazria ve'odah zachar. When a woman goes ahead and she conceives and gives birth to a male child, the Tama Shivat Yamim, she becomes impure. Not really a good translation. She's Tme'ah for 7 days. Kimei midat dota titma. She remains impure as a woman who's menstruating. Ubiyom hashmini yomul basar olato. And then on the 8th day, you should go ahead and circumcise the foreskin of this child. And then after this pasuk, the Torah goes on and it continues talking about the halachot of tumas leida, and she has to wait. She has to wait until the 40th day, and then bring a korban chadas, and a korban ola. Okay. So a couple questions on this. First of all, why the repeat of the mitzvah? We already have it by Avram. Why a repeat here? Question number 2 is really, is this placed here in any type of context? It seems really out of place. It's other than the fact that we're talking about somebody who gave birth and there's a male child, so we have to go ahead and circumcise it. But there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be done. You gotta take her to the hospital. You gotta go back. You gotta call the caterer. You got a lot of things you have to do. Why put it right here? And why put it right here in the middle of the Tumah process, or the Tahara process of the Yoledet? So both of those questions I hope to analyze with you today. Why the repeat of the mitzvah, or rather the significance of the repeat of the mitzvah, and the context in which it is repeated. Okay, so first of all, we know that it's not only Milah that we've had before. We got a whole slew of mitzvahs that were given way before Har Sinai, and for this there's an important Rambam in source number 3. This is the Rambam in his Mishnah Torah. Hilchot Malachim, Perek Tet, Halacha Aleph. So the Rambam explains al shisha dvarim nitztava Adam Harishon. 6 things Adam Harishon was commanded. Al avodah zara and idolatry, va'al birkat Hashem in terms of blessing, so to speak, of cursing God, v'al shfichas damim, murder, v'al gilui arayat, illicit relationships, v'al gezel on stealing, v'al hadinim in terms of establishing a system of justice. Or enforcing that system of justice. Afal pi shekulan hein kabbalah bi'adenu Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though all of these have been received, the tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu, we can go ahead and we can understand on the rational mitzvot. You can go ahead and you can even learn them out from the psukim that they were commanded to Adam Harishon. And then Noach, all of a sudden, he gets the 7th mitzvah, or prohibition of Ever Menachai, Shene'amar, Ach, Basar v'nafsho damo lo tochelu. You cannot go ahead, you can eat meat, but you can't go ahead and eat Ever Menachai. Nimsa Sheva mitzvah. So now we have 7 mitzvahs that were given to Bnei Noach. Then we have that 7 mitzvahs until Avram. Avram is now given an 8th mitzvah, that of circumcision. Yeah. Sorry, did I skip a line? And he davened shachris. He instituted tefillah. Yitzchak hifrish maaser v'hosif tefillah acheret not hayom, and Yitzchak went ahead in terms of maaser, and then he also instituted mincha. Yaakov hosif gid hanash, and then by the time of Yaakov, we have the sciatic nerve that we're not allowed to eat palel arvit, and now we also have in terms of the 3rd tefillah of the day. And then we get to Egypt, and we get more and more mitzvot until we get to the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and then we get the full 613. We get them all. So there's kind of almost a development of the mitzvot until we reach the 613 by Moshe Rabbeinu. So we have all these mitzvahs before the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and then we have the mitzvahs after Moshe Rabbeinu. So what exactly is the relationship between them? And here we have another very important Rambam in source number 4. Here's the Rambam in his commentary to the Mishnayot. Perek Kulin, Perek Zayin, Mishnah Vav. So the Rambam calls this an Ikar Gadol, a fundamental principle that we really need to know. And he says as such, pay attention to this very, very important mitzvah, or principle. What's the Mishnah they're talking about? The Mishnah is talking about machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, right? Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim regarding Gid Hanasha, whether it was commanded already at the time of Yaakov, or it was commanded after Har Sinai, and then it was just placed back, kind of edited in. Back into Bereshit, not edited in terms of documentary hypothesis edited, but edited by God back into the text at its proper place. So based on that, so the Rambam goes ahead and he expounds on something much more fundamental, which is the fundamental principle which is expressed in this Mishnah. What is that? What the Mishnah says, Mesinai ne'esar, that the prohibitions that we have, and included along with that are the mitzvahs that we have, they come from Sinai. Everything that we go ahead and we distance ourselves from, or we do today, the reason we do it is because Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the commandment. That which we don't eat, a limb from a living animal that was taken off from an animal while it's alive. It has nothing to do with the fact that Hashem said to Noach, hey, Noach, you can't do this. Yeah, because Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, hey, you can't do it. Oh, they weren't doing it before? Says the Rambam, yes, but now it's because it comes from Har Sinai. It's not the same thing. The mitzvahs of mitzvahs b'nei Noach, Shavua mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and everything seemingly that was with it between there and Har Sinai, we don't we don't do it for that reason. We do it because it was commanded at Har Sinai. The Rambam continues. The reason we do Milah is not because Avram Avinu, he circumcised himself and all of his household. Rather, it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded to Moshe Rabbeinu, or through Moshe Rabbeinu, that we should go ahead and circumcise ourselves, just like Avram Avinu did. But not that the command itself is coming from Avram Avinu. So too, with the sciatic nerve, not that which Yaakov and his children, whether they did or did not eat a Gid Nasha at the time, but let's assume for a second that they did for argument's sake. That's not why we don't do it. Mitzvot Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom. Hello te'eh mashu amru taryag mitzvos ne'amru lo the Moshe miSinai v'chol elu mechlal ha-mitzvot. 613 were given to Moshe at Har Sinai. Not 540 and then fill in the rest with everything that was handed before, but 613, and that is why we do the mitzvahs, because they were commanded at Moshe, not because they were given to Noach or Avram or Amram or any of them. Okay. So what's exactly is the connection between the mitzvahs, the commandments that happen? Is there any connection between the commandments that happened before Har Sinai and that happened after Har Sinai? And here we have an incredibly interesting Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin. The Gemara deals with exactly this question, and it brings in the name of Rav Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina. Kol mitzvah shenemar lebnei Noach v'nishnit b'Sinai lezeh v'zeh ne'emra. Anything that was commanded previously to Bnei Noach, or let's say Bnei Noach right now, v'nishnit b'Sinai, and it was given a second time at Har Sinai, lezeh v'zeh ne'emra. It's now applies to both. Okay. Lebnei Noach v'lo nishnit b'Sinai. If it was given to Bnei Noach and not repeated at Sinai, liYisrael nemra v'lo lebnei Noach. I guess if it wasn't given again at Sinai, so then who gets it? It goes to Yisrael, and now Bnei Noach are no longer obligated to it. Now the logic here seemingly is a little counterintuitive, right? If it was before and after, then it applies to both. So the Gemara, actually it's in the ... here, but I'll just say it outside what it says. The Gemara then argues that it really should be the opposite. If it was said again, right? I'll ask you, if it was said again, it was commanded before Har Sinai to Bnei Noach, and then Hashem repeats it at Har Sinai, who should it apply to? Throw it out to the crowd. Anyone can feel free to answer. I know I'm going against the rules here, but
the Jews.
It would apply only to the Jews, right? Otherwise, why would you repeat it to the Jews? It applied to everybody. So that the Gemara argues this 1 second. It's the opposite logic. If it was repeated at Har Sinai, so it sounds like it should now, God is saying it only applies to the Jews and no longer applies to Bnei Noach. So why are you telling me that applies, if it's repeated, it applies to both? So the Gemara goes on, he says, you know what? You have a point, it's good logic, but I'll bring you proof that what we're saying is correct. Avodah Zarah is repeated to the Jews after Har Sinai, and it was also Bnei Noach, yet we know that Bnei Noach are still prohibited in Avodah Zarah, and so are we. So from the fact that you see it, this is, I guess, a prototype example. We learn from here, from Avodah Zarah, something that was given to Bnei Noach and then afterwards repeated to the Jews, and it applies to both. So therefore, anything like that which was given to the Bnei Noach before and to the Jews afterwards applies to both the Jews and Bnei Noach. Next part of the Gemara. What about the opposite? If it was given to Bnei Noach and not repeated to the Jews, what would you think? Who should it apply to? For $500, who should it apply to?
Bnei Noach.
Bnei Noach, right? Why would I think otherwise? If it's given to Bnei Noach and not given to the Jews afterwards, makes perfect sense. So why does the Gemara say that if it was given to Bnei Noach and not given to Sinai afterwards, that it only applies to Yisrael and not Noach? So the Gemara says an incredible line. You can have a whole shir just on this line. You can't have, it's inconceivable to have something that is prohibited for the non-Jews and it's permissible for the Jews. It's inconceivable, right? For a whole nother share, maybe, what happens when if such a thing can happen, that the morality of the world around us, of the secular world around us, reaches a level in which they look at the Jews and the Torah and they say, oh, it's not on par with morality, right? So do we have an obligation? Can we have such a state, or do we not have an obligation even to raise our morality to that of the world around us? That is a question worthy of a whole series. Rabbi Kelman, I'm throwing it to you. You can go ahead and arrange a series with somebody else giving it than me. In any case, so we say because we can't have such a situation like that. So if it was given to Bnei Noach and not given to the Jews afterwards, it only applies to Israel. I'll give you an example. The Gemara, I think in Yevamos, talks about let's say you have a person who converts. He converts, and then let's say his sister converts, right? Him and his sister convert. Or him and his mother convert. Okay, so they're katan shenola dami. They really are, both of them are considered like new people. They have absolutely no relationship to anybody. As now that they're newborn Jews, they have no relationship to anybody that they related to before, not their mother, not their sister, not their father. So theoretically, says the Gemara, they can marry each other. They can have a son marry his mother because they're not really related anymore. B'chinat halacha. So the Gemara says that's just ridiculous. You can't have something that was prohibited when the guy was a goy, and all of a sudden he became a Jew, converted, and now it's permissible. Beforehand, while he was a non-Jew, he couldn't go ahead and marry his mother and have relations with his mother, and now he converts and it's allowed. So the Gemara says can't be such a thing. All right, anyways, let's go on. Why is this relevant? Because the Gemara goes on and it questions if this is really true. Right, and for our sake, the Gemara continues here after the two dots that we just filled in. V'harei mila shenemra lebnei Noach. Bnei Noach were given mila. When were Bnei Noach given mila? The reason I'm asking it, even though it's obvious, is because I want you to just contemplate that line. Bnei Noach were given mila. T'chtiv v'ata et briti tishmor. Who was given brit mila? Avram. And the Gemara calls Avram, is referring to Avram as Bnei Noach.
But Ishmael was also circumcised.
Ishmael was also circumcised. Excellent, right? Ishmael is not just given to Avram, it's given to Avram and his children. That's actually the continuation of the Gemara, which I wasn't going to get into, but since you mentioned it, I'll mention it as well. But number one, that it refers to Avram as Bnei Noach. It doesn't refer to him as the first Jew. It refers to him as Bnei Noach, which is interesting. The Gemara seems to be taking a stance here. The general machlokes rishonim of how do we view the avot. For the sake of this shir, based on this Gemara, we're going to refer to them as Bnei Noach. Okay. The Mishnah at Sinai, and it was repeated again at Har Sinai. Ubiyom Hashmini Yimol. LiYisrael Nemra v'lo Bnei Noach. Right. So, according to the rules of the Gemara, if it was repeated, if it was given to Bnei Noach and repeated at Har Sinai. So who does it go to? Who should it go to? Who should the mitzvah belong to or apply to? It should apply to Yisrael and Bnei Noach. But says the Gemara, Yisrael nemar v'lo Bnei Noach. Bnei Noach are not obligated in the mitzvah of Milah. Only Am Yisrael are. So doesn't that go against the rules of the Gemara? Put Avram's children aside. That's the Gemara gets into that later on. So that's the issue with the Gemara. And the Gemara answers, Ahu the Mishrei Shabbat. So the Gemara says, no. B'yom hashmini yimul, in our parsha, in Parshat Tazria, it's not coming and giving a tzivu, it's not coming and giving a commandment and saying, hey, you have to go ahead and do milah. Rather, it's giving a heter. It's saying what? B'yom hashmini yimul, you can and you should on the 8th day do the milah, even in the case when it falls out on Shabbat. And this is where the Gemara learns out the heter of that milah, the mitzvah of circumcision, pushes off Shabbat, and that's why we have circumcisions on Shabbat, even though there's, not theoretically, practically there are malachot involved in doing the milah. And the Gemara says, that's fine. How do I know? B'yom hashmini, even on Yom hashmini, afilu b'Shabbat, you can even do it on Shabbat. So at this stage in the Gemara, where's the mitzvah of milah? When was milah given? How do I know the mitzvah of milah? It was given to Avram. right? And it was not given a second time to Am Yisrael, and therefore, since it was given to Bnei Noach and not repeated at Sinai, it only applies to the Jews and not to the rest of the world, Bnei Torah, Avram's the rest of his children on the side for now. Okay, so that's answer number one of the Gemara. Then the Gemara goes on and says, Ibayis Ema, if you want to say, I'll give you a totally different answer. Mila mi'ikar la'avram hudaka mizahir le'rachmana v'ata et briti tishmor ata v'zarecha acharecha l'dorotam ata v'zarecha in inish achrina lo. So Gemara says, Avram was commanded in Mila, but not as Bnei Noach. And it wasn't something that was given to all of Bnei Noach. It was only given to Avram and his children, but not Avram's cousin or Avram's neighbor or the rest of Bnei Noach. And so therefore, this is not considered, the commandment to Avram of Mila is not considered as a Mila, as a tzivoy that was given to Bnei Noach. And therefore, where's the tzivoy that we have? What's the only tzivoy that we have? Ubiyom Hashmini.
From Moshe Rabbeinu.
From Moshe Rabbeinu, exactly. From this week's Parsha, Ubiyom Hashmini. So where did I see the Gemara is that there's two answers, right? Whether saying that we have the issue is it seems like we have the commandment giving it to Bnei Noach, to Avram, and after Har Sinai in this week's Parsha, in Parshat Tazria, Biyom Hashmini. So if that's true, it should apply to both Bnei Noach and Yisrael, and we know that's not true. It only applies to Yisrael. So the Gemara's first answer is it was Biyom Hashmini. This week's parsha is not a repeat of the commandment. It's just giving you a heter that you can do it on Shabbat. So the real command is not Biyom Hashmini. It's from prior to Sinai. It's to Avram. The second answer is no. What was given to Avram isn't what we wouldn't consider that a mitzvah to Bnei Noach. That's given just to Avram and his children. The real mitzvah comes from Ubiyom Hashmini. It comes from this week's parsha. Okay, so either which way you go, Bnei Noach are not obligated in the mitzvah of Mila, and Bnei Avra and Am Yisrael are. Just because it was mentioned about Avram's kids, so there is an incredibly interesting machloket Rishonim in terms of which kids of Avram and for how long did it continue. Rashi on this Gemara says that the mitzvah of Mila that Avram was given to his children applies to, the Gemara says it applies to Bnei Torah, of all of Torah's children. The Rashi says only for those 6, and it stopped then. It doesn't go on to the generations afterwards. That's Rashi. Is it not Tosos or Rid? There's another opinion. It was the Rush. Sorry, the Rush. I think it's the Rush. The Rush says that it does go on from generation to generation, but only until Har Sinai. And Har Sinai, Bnei Torah are no longer obligated in Mila. The Rambam comes along and he says, no, Bnei Torah are still obligated in Mila. Not only that, Bnei Ishmael are all mixed in with Bnei Torah, and therefore basically all Arabs, according to the Rambam, are obligated in Mila. And that's an interesting, it's not just a theoretical machloket, it's actually a practical machloket because it's prohibited for a Jew to give a non-Jew circumcision. But the Rambam says that you can give an Arab a circumcision because you can assume that they are of Bnei Torah. Interesting machloket for another time. Okay, so we have these two options: whether the mitzvah is really the command comes from Avram, or it comes from our parsha Ubiyom HaShmini. Okay. Based on what the Rambam wrote here, that we only do mitzvos because we're commanded at Har Sinai. So I would think that any time we bring up this mitzvah, we should bring up a source as Ubiyom HaShmini. And the truth is, the Yerushalmi does just this. The Yerushalmi, the Mishnah in Kedushin that talks about all the mitzvot that a father is obligated to his son, and all the mitzvah that the son is obligated to his father. And the Gemara explains that what is a mitzvah of al haben, that is on the father for the son. So the Gemara explains that this is the mitzvah of Mila. Mitzvah sha'av chayav la'asot lebeno, any mitzvah that the father is obligated to the son. For example, Mila do pidyon haben, to redeem him, to teach him Torah, to teach him some type of profession, to get him married. And then the Gemara says, well, how do I know that the obligation for Mila is specifically on the father as opposed and to the exclusion of other people, perhaps to the mother, perhaps for anybody else who gets first dibs? So the Gemara, the Yerushalmi says, Rabbi Kiva Omer, okay, sorry, that's the Gemara. And the Gemara says, to go ahead and circumcise him. How do I know that? And the Gemara brings our pasuk, on the 8th day, you have to go ahead and circumcise his flesh. So kafta b'ferach is beautiful. The Gemara Yerushalmi brings from our parsha. But things get a little messy when you look at the Bavli. The Bavli, Maseches Kedushin Chavtet, says the Molo Minalan. How do I know to do the Milah? How do I know that's on the father? The Chtiv Vayamal Avram Yitzchak Beno, and it goes ahead and the Gemara brings from Avram Avinu. So, what do we do with that? Which is it? So the Yerushalmi and the Bavli seem to line up with the two answers of the relationship between them. Is it from Avram or is it from Sinai? But things get really sticky if we focus in just how the Rambam brings down the mitzvah, because he brings it down and he brings down the source for it differently in different places. The Rambam in his Sefer HaMitzvot. The Rambam in his Sefer Mitzvot, the Sefer Mitzvot that I think I myself have even said it in this forum before. The Rambam Sefer Mitzvot, he wrote almost as a preparatory stage in the writing of the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah was supposed to be his great halachic work that's going to go ahead and codify all of Jewish law, all biblical law, all rabbinic law, and explain it categorically and fundamentally. But if you want to go ahead and write a book about all Jewish law and all the halachot and all the mitzvot, so you have to know what the mitzvot are. So the Rambam therefore wrote the Sefer HaMitzvot, and he listed for you, well, what are the 613 mitzvot? And so in Mitzvot Aseh, Reish Tavav in Reish Tavav 2:15, so the Rambam brings down the mitzvah and he says like this: He shetzivanu lemul et haben. Mitzvah 2:15 is to go ahead and circumcise a son. V'hu amro yitalel Avram. How do we know you have a mitzvah to go ahead and circumcise your son? Because of Hashem said to Avram, not only that the milah itself we learn from Avram, but the fact that the son is chayv karei, mishim vatel mitzvah zu, also from Avram. So that's in the Sefer HaMitzvot. Things become complicated when you look at the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah, even at the very beginning, the Rambam gives another minyan ha-mitzvot. He goes ahead and he recounts all of the mitzvot, a lot shorter than he does in Sefer HaMitzvot. And there the Rambam writes, L'mul et haben shenemar b'yom hashmini yimul basar aloto. Here the Rambam does a 180. And all of a sudden he brings from our parsha a proof. So what's going on with the Rambam? There's a split here. What exactly is the connection or the correlation between them? Okay, so that's the question. We're trying to understand the relationship between the tzivui that was given to Avram versus the tzivui that was given at Har Sinai, and what fundamentally is the primary source for us. But it needs to be stated that the milah of Avraham, and we'll see this in the Gemara, was not the same milah that we do nowadays. Avram had a different milah altogether. There are two parts of the milah. There's the milah itself, which is referred to in halacha as the chituk, which is they pull the foreskin over the crown and they cut off the top of the foreskin. That's what Avram did. Avram only had the chituk, he only had the milah. Later generations, we'll see from the Gemara, only in the time of Yehoshua, when they entered the land. So then there was the second part of the mitzvah that was fulfilled, and that's not the milah and the chituk, but that's the priya. That there's another membrane of skin that was underneath that first layer of orla, and that after cutting off the foreskin, so that membrane needs to be split open and folded over the limb. Okay, so there's the milah and then there's the priya. The milah is cutting off the foreskin, and the priya is making a little cut and bending the leftover membrane over the aver. So Avram only had the first part. He only had Mila, he only had Chitoch. In Sephirah Yeshua, as they're entering the land in source number 10, Be'et hahi amar Hashem al Yehoshua, asei lecha charavot surim v'shuv mol et bnei Yisrael shinit. When Yeshua was now entering the land, so Hashem says, make flint knives, make sharp knives, and go ahead. And I want you to circumcise everybody a second time. Go ahead and circumcise them again. As they're entering the land, 40 years in the desert, now they're entering the land. So based on this pasuk, the Gemara learns out the following, what we basically already said, but let's read it inside. Amar Rava bar Yitzchak, this is the Gemara in Yevamo, Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Bet. Amar Rava bar Yitzchak, Amar Rav, Lo nitna priya mila la'Avram Avinu. This second aspect of the mila, of the folding over of the membrane, wasn't given to Avram. Shenemar be'et hahi amar Hashem al Yehoshua aseh lecha charavot surim. Our pasuk itself. Right. So the fact that Yeshua is being commanded, hey, pick up these sharp stones and go ahead and do this another mila. Why did they have to do another mila? Didn't they already have a mila before? So the Gemara says, well, one second. How do you know it's the people that already had a mila that you have to now go ahead and do another mila? Meaning you have to now do the second aspect of the mila, the priya, the bending, the folding over of the membrane. Dilma chanach delomahu. Dechtiv ki molim ayu kol ha'am hayotzim v'chol ha'am hayoladim. K'nei the pasuk is b'midbar b'derech b'tzitam b'mitzrayim lomalu. The pasuk says that the children in the desert, they never had mila because of the winds or because of the danger, whatever the case was. There was a substantial amount of Am Yisrael who were entering the nation, entering the land now, who just never had any mila. They didn't even have the first part of the mila, the chitoch, that the Gemara argues that only Avram Avinu had. So the Gemara says, no, you can't be talking about that. In Cain, my shuv, what is this? Go ahead and do it again. Elalav the priya, it must be talking about folding the membrane. So my shnit, what's this? What means? So you should do it a second time. So the Gemara basically ends up saying like this. The conclusion of the Gemara is as follows. Avram was given the chituch, the mila, the first part of the mila, and only at the time of Yeshua were they given, or even at the time Moshe Rabbeinu, but they only fulfilled it at the time of Yeshua and entered the land, the second aspect of mila, the priya. And the Gemara explains that this second aspect of mila, the priya, is fundamental. It's ma'akiv. It holds back. If somebody doesn't do the priya, so they're not yotzi the mila. The Gemara says ma'a v'lo para is nothing. It doesn't count as mila. So now we're even in a bigger pickle, because if you want to say that the mila that we do nowadays, the commandment comes from Avram Avinu, we keep on bringing that as a pasuk. That wasn't even the mila that we do nowadays. Avram had a totally different mila. He only had the mila. If we went ahead and if Avram, forget Eliyahu and Navi, Avram Avinu comes to your bris. Okay, he comes in and he said, "Oh, Avram Avinu, you had Moshe the Moel, Moshe the Moel of Yerushalayim. Let's say if you were zochah to have him at your bris, so you say Moshe, move aside. I want Avram to do it. I can't believe Avram Avinu is here. Avram, you give Avram the knife, and Avram goes ahead and he does the mila the way that Avram knows, the way that Avram did it to himself. Well, he did it tapas dam bris, but the way that Avram did it to his kids, right? So you'd say, Avram, 1 second, this isn't a kosher mila. Where's the priya? He'd be like, priya what? What's that? Right? Avram wasn't given a priya. So how could we say that the mila that we were commanded even comes from Avram Avinu if it's not the same mila at all? Okay. So let's try that now we're really in a pickle. Let's try to answer this up now. I saw a beautiful piece from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think I don't read a lot of the Kutei Sichot of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but somebody directed to this, and it was very nice. It was very grounded. It was very long, and it had a lot of lovely stuff to say. So here you have for the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe makes the following arguments. He's trying to answer. He asks the question about the Rambam. He says, "Why does the Rambam switch off in Minyan HaMitzvot?" Let's go back. In Minyan HaMitzvot, in Sephirah HaMitzvot, the Rambam brings from the pasuk from Avraham Avinu, "Hamul lachem kol zachar." In Minyan HaMitzvot of the Mishnah Torah, which is his halachic sefer, Ubiyom Hashmini Yomol Basar Latoh, he brings from Parshat Tazria. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe makes the following argument. He says you have to understand the difference, the distinction between the book of Sephirah Mitzvot, the Rambam's book of commandments, versus the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah is a halachic work. It's extensive halachic work. It's probably the most important halachic work we have post Talmud. Not probably. It is the most important halachic work we have post Talmud. Sephirah Mitzvot argues the Lubavitcher Rebbe is not inherently a halachic work. It's more. It deals with halacha. I mean, it brings down the mitzvot. But when he brings a mitzvah, when he brings a source for a mitzvah and Sephirah Mitzvot, it's not to tell you the halachic source for it. It's not to tell you the reason that it's given. Rather, it's to tell you the essence of the mitzvah. So therefore, in Sephirah Mitzvah, when he's telling you about the essence of the mitzvah, what is the essence of milah? To circumcise your son, what is the essence? So he brings a pasuk from Avram Avinu. That the essence of milah, even if Avram's milah wasn't the same milah as ours, nonetheless, it's the essence of it is the same. The brit that Avram did with Hashem, that made with Hashem through the milah, that's the brit that we're doing, right? The truth is, you can even medayik this a little bit in the Rambam. Here back in the Parshat of Mishnah, the Rambam says, we don't do milah, we don't circumcise our kids because Avram did it to himself or his household. Rather, because Hashem did it, commanded us through Moshe Rabbeinu that we should circumcise ourselves. And then he adds on, we have to circumcise ourselves. How should we have to circumcise ourselves? As Avram Avinu did it. Now, it doesn't mean as Avram did it in terms of the technically, how did he do it? Because as we said, Avram didn't do it technically how we did it. So what does it mean, Kamo Shemal Avram Avinu? It means what the milah is all about. It's about the covenant. We're not just doing an action, but every time somebody goes ahead and goes through the circumcision, he's reenacting the covenant that Avram Avinu went ahead and did. Okay, so the heart of the mitzvah comes from Avram Avinu, even though the tzivoy, the commandment itself, our obligation to do it, comes from post Sinai, and that's why when Rambam is writing his book about halacha, his Mishnah Torah, he brings the pasuk from our parsha, B'yom Hashmini. That's where the Rambam learns the obligation. That's the Lubavitcher Rebbe's explanation. Very beautiful. A couple questions on it, though. First of all, I don't know if it's true. You'd have to really, you have to do a real research on this. You'd have to go through all the times that the Rambam brings other psukim and see if it really follows through. That's problem number one, or my question number one on him. My question number two is that in the Mishnah Torah, it's true in his Minoya mitzvah, when he counts the mitzvot, he brings from B'yom Hashmini, he brings from our parsha post Har Sinai. But when he actually talks about the halachot and he talks about the Isser Karei, so he relates it back to Avram, because that's the pasuk. The pasuk by Avram Avinu actually says Karei. V'nichrata hanefesh, this is back in Bereishit. V'nichrata hanefesh ahi me'almeh et birti hefer. Anybody who goes ahead and cast aside my covenant. So he has Karei. So I don't know how the Lubavitcher Rebbe would deal with that. It's a question. Anybody's welcome to answer or write to me later if they think of an answer. That's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Okay. I want to suggest another possible answer of what's going on here. We're making this line of like there's pre-Har Sinai and post-Har Sinai, right? And the two shall never meet. There are mitzvahs that were commanded before, and the mitzvahs commanded afterwards. But perhaps that's not exactly what's going on, even with all the mitzvot. But perhaps it's not B'nai Noach and Am Yisrael, but there is some type of evolution and progression where we go from being B'nai Noach, B'nai Avram, B'nai Yitzchak, B'nai Yaakov, and slowly transform into becoming the nation of Am Yisrael. And even as we become the nation of Am Yisrael, our relationship to the mitzvah, to Hashem, keeps on evolving until it climaxes and reaches its fullest later on in history, which we'll talk about those points as we go further. And I'll say where am I getting this from? Why would I say such a thing? So the Gemara in Horiot and Daf Chet has a discussion about what the first mitzvah that was given to Am Yisrael was. Why it's having that discussion is not really relevant for us. But it says, oh, you know what the first mitzvah that was given, straight from Moshe. So the Gemara says that it was the commandment against Avodah Zarah from the Aseret HaDibrot. But then the Gemara says, I don't have the Gemara, I'll just say it outside. The Gemara says, wait, one second. The first mitzvahs that we got were from the tablets, from Mamad Har Sinai, from the Aseret HaDibrot. V'ha'amar ma asa eser mitzvah nitztuvim b'mara. We were given, the Gemara brings an opinion that we were given 10 mitzvot at Mara. We know that we were given Shabbat and possibly other mitzvot, so the Gemara counts 10. The number is irrelevant for right now, but the Gemara suggests, 1 second, how could you say the first mitzvah that were given to Am Yisrael were given at Har Sinai? What about Mara? We were given at Mara. So Tosfot is bothered by this. Tosfot says, why? Why are you going to Mara? I can go back even further. I can go back all the way to who? Avram Avinu. Right? Why does the Gemara ask from Mara? We can go ahead and ask from Avram Avinu. And Tosfos therefore suggests an answer. Why are you asking? Why are you asking from? Oh, the Gemara brings that we had mitzvahs that were given at Mara. We have mitzvot that were given explicitly in the text before Har Sinai. Kigon Mila da Avram Avinu. We got not just one, but we got a whole few psukim about Mila da Avram Avinu. Why are you telling me about Mara? All these other mitzvahs that give it to Bnei Noach, which we had explicit psukim to. Why is that not brought? So Tosfot explains, Mishum dahacha nitztavi Yisrael v'hatam Bnei Noach. There it was given to Bnei Noach. So the fact that that we're going to call Avram Bnei Noach, I don't need Tosfos for that. We already saw the Gemara calls Avram Bnei Noach. That's not what interests me here. But when is he saying Hacha nitztavu Yisrael? Where's Hacha? Here we were commanded as Yisrael. Where's here? Here is Mara. Here is Mara, and that's radical, because this is Mara is before Har Sinai, right? Which means Tosfos is seeing this as some type of progression. Har Sinai wasn't the beginning and end all of us becoming a nation and accepting the mitzvah. We became a nation before Har Sinai, at least according to Tosfot, before at Mara, if not before, and mitzvot were given then as well. So we're seeing some type of progression, of evolution of us accepting the mitzvah. It wasn't a beginning and end all deal at Har Sinai. This also, we could be medayik this in the Rambam itself. We'll go back. The Rambam talks about the toldot of the mitzvah, and he says in source number 3 in Hilchos Malachim, Perek 10 Halacha Aleph, which we read before, that 6 mitzvahs were given to Adam HaRishon, and then a 7th was given to Noach in terms of Ever Menachai, and then Avram was given Milah, and then Avram went ahead himself, and he was mitakin Shacharis and Yitzhak, Maser, and Mincha, etc., etc. He ends off saying, Ad sheba Moshe Rabbeinu v'nishlama Torah al yado. Until Moshe comes along, and not he gives us all of them again. He completes it, meaning everything that happened before, it wasn't for naught, it wasn't nothing. It's inherently part of the evolution of the mitzvah, right? So maybe the reason that we do it is not because of Avram, the commandment, but that's where, so to speak, the seed was planted for the mitzvah that we're going to get after Har Sinai. It's an evolution of all of the Taryag mitzvahs, all of the 613 mitzvahs, starting from Bnei Noach. As those mitzvahs evolve and we evolve with them, the mitzvahs evolve, and we as a nation, as a family, as a tribe, and then as a nation, until we get to Har Sinai, and then we have the 613. We see this even through Mila itself. Why? We mentioned that there were two parts to the Mila. There's the chituch, there's what's called the Mila, the chituch, the cutting off of the foreskin. That's part number one, that only Avram had. And then what we have, the folding of the membrane over the Aver. So we know the Gemara says that ma v'lo para is nothing. If you do one without the other, it's not considered a mila. So here's an interesting question. What happens? Let's say you have a somebody who's converting. Okay. Let's say he's converting. So in order to, so the whole conversion process, the person has to do, the way we do it nowadays, is that there's Kabbalah Mitzvot, somebody accepts upon himself all the yoke of heaven. Then he goes ahead, if he's a male, if it's a female, they just do tefillah, and then they're good. If it's a male, so the male, you have to go ahead and you do Kabbalah Mitzvot, accepting upon yourself all the mitzvot. Then we do the Mila. Then he has to wait until he heals. And then he does tefillah immersion in the mikvah along with another Kabbalah HaMitzvot. Now, sometimes the process can take a long time, right? You have to heal from the circumcision before you go ahead into the mikvah. Why don't we go ahead and reverse the order? Wouldn't it be a lot faster? Do the Mila, come out while you're still dressed. We've already got half the process. It's already not dressed. You can go ahead and do the Mila on his way out of the mikvah. He can even still have his hair wet. So why don't we do that? So the Gemara and the Rishonim explain that we don't want a guy to be like in the middle here. We don't want this in between process or status where a guy goes to the mikvah. He says, "Yeah, I'm all Shabbos. Sounds so great. I love it. Let's go. I'm ready to be a Jew." He jumps in the mikvah, and then we say, "Okay, lie down on the table. We're going to do the circumcision." He goes, "Whoa, I didn't sign up for this," and then he backs out in the middle of the process. So the assumption is once he does the Mila, to go ahead and do the tefillah afterwards is not a big deal. He'll be happy to do that. The only problem is that there's in between status. So here's the question. This is the Binyan Sion raises this question, and it's been dealt with. Let's say you have somebody. This happened in 1847. Binyan Sion, the Oral Chaner of Yaakov Edlinger, was a Rav in Germany. So he deals with a case that happened in Yerushalayim in 1847. That you had a non-Jew who was converting, it was a ger, and he accepts the mitzvos, and he goes ahead and he does the milah, and lo and behold, it's taking too long. It's taking a while for him to heal, and now it's Shabbat. So what does he do? It's a problem. A goy that keeps Shabbat is chayv mita. He's not allowed to keep a Shabbat. Shabbat is for the Jews, not for the non-Jews. So the question is, can or should the non-Jew keep Shabbat, or perhaps it's prohibited for him to keep the Shabbat and to be chayav mita? So much has been written on these type of cases, but to cut it short, the Beit Din in Yerushalayim said he's chayav to go ahead and desecrate Shabbat. He's chayav to desecrate Shabbat. The Binyan Sion wasn't so thrilled about this, and he said, "Why? Why is that? Why do you say that he's a chayav? It's true that he's not a Jew all the way, but he's not a non-Jew. He's kind of in this like middle status." And he brings proof from the fact that we kept Shabbat. When was our first Shabbat that we kept? According to many, at Mara. We were given Shabbat to some extent at Mara, and we kept Shabbat. If we were considered non-Jews, then it's Rabbi Chayav Mita. So says the Binyan Sion, you see proof that you don't need to be a full-fledged Jew to keep the Shabbat. You have to just be in the middle of the process. So this is what many poskim coin as Yatsa Bechlal, Yatsa Mechlal Akum, Yatsa Mechlal Torah's Akum, V'lo Nichnas Lechlal Kedushas Yisrael. Somebody can go ahead and they can leave the status of being a non-Jew, but they haven't yet entered into the holiness, the status of being a Jew. They're in this in-between period, which in a sense is almost, you can say the same thing to perhaps of this Mila, the Mila of the low para, and you don't do the folding of the membrane. So it's kind of, Avram was entering into this process, but he didn't yet enter into Kedushas Yisrael in terms of us becoming a nation. So when did this process end? If the mitzvahs in general kind of had an evolution, and our relationship to the mitzvahs to Hashem had an evolution through time, as we got more and more. When did the process come to a climax? And we say, okay, now we've reached it. What would you guys say? For $500. Okay, so some might argue Har Sinai, but I would argue no. I would argue when Yeshua enters the land. But when Yeshua enters the land, what's going on? That's when Hashem says, okay, I want you to do Priya. I want you to do this next part of the Brit because you're entering the land. The Tur, the son of the Rosh, the Tur, right, in his introduction to Hilchot Milah, he says something interesting. The Gemara, the Mishnah in Nidarim, in the third parak, so it brings all these wonderful things, all these wonderful statements about Milah, that the 13 13 covenants were written on it, and that Avram wasn't considered Shalem until he had the Milah. So the Tur adds one of them. He says, Mitzvah aseh l'chol adam miyisrael sheyimoled beno v'gdolei hi shar mitzvah. Mitzvah is to go ahead and circumcise a sign. It's a great mitzvah, tremendous mitzvah. A mitzvah aseh sheyesh b'tzad kares. First of all, it's incredibly stringent. The fact that it has a tzad kares. It's the one of two positive mitzvahs that a person doesn't do. So the chayav kares, the other one being Korban Pesach. The gam nichrata aleh yud gimel brito. 13 covenants were written on it. The Parshat Milah. Below nikra Avram shalem ad shenimo. Avram wasn't complete until he does it. And then the Torah himself adds on ubizchuta nichrata lo brit al netinat haaretz. On the Milah itself, that was the covenant that we were given with the land. When Avram Avinu was told about Brit Milah, it says there, and I'm going to give the land to your children. So at this point, when Yeshua is entering the land, this is where it comes full circle. This is where we're not just, we went through Bnei Noach, we went through Avram getting Milah, we've get through Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov adding on, all of the tefillah. We went through the Mara and all of the mitzvahs that were given before Har Sinai. We went through Har Sinai and we got all the mitzvahs, but the covenant isn't complete yet. When is it complete? When Yeshua, 40 years later, enters the land. At this point, Milah is done in its completion. There's the Priya, and we enter the land. V'nechrata lo brit al netinat haaretz. There's a completion. There's a full circle that happens here. So to summarize, stop sharing screen. How do I stop sharing screen? I can't do it. Okay. To summarize, the source of Milah, our obligation, for sure comes with Yom Hashmini, from this week's Parsha. But it's planted, its roots start with Avram Avinu. It starts with Avram Avinu and it goes through this whole evolution until it gets to us. And I just want to wrap it up with one last question that we started off with. What in the world is Milah doing here? I get it. It has to come with Har Sinai. It has to be after Har Sinai. We have to get it again. But why in the middle of the whole story of Tumas Leda and smack in the middle of it? So perhaps it actually fits in beautifully. Why? The woman who gives birth, so there's a double process here, right? First, she's tummy for 7 days, right? After she finishes this tumah of 7 days, so now she becomes tahar. Now it's tahar. It's pure blood, but she's still in this like quasi state. She can't yet enter the mikdash. Right? She can be with her husband. She can't yet enter the mikdash until day 40, where she brings her korban. And it's at that point, at this in between point, where she's finished her day 7, but she hasn't yet reached day 40. She's kind of is like in between impurity. The Torah says, "Ubiyom hashmini yimol basar alato." Now, this is where we're given the mitzvah of Milah, not just the mitzvah of Milah, but we're given the mitzvah of Priya, the second aspect of it, because just like the woman is going through this process, this evolutionary process of becoming of Tahora, that it's day 7, and then it's day 40, and then it's the Karbanar that goes through the process. So Milah is stuck in the middle to tell you that's the exact same thing that's happening with Milah as well. It's also an evolutionary process. We're also getting there. Perhaps that's why it's going here as well. Okay, I have 55 minutes. We have 5 minutes for any questions, if there are any questions. I don't know how to stop share screen. It's not.
There should be on the top, you should have an option there that says, stop sharing or something like that. You see it?
It should, but can you just not make me host anymore?
I don't think, no, I think even if I don't make you host, I still think you'll, I don't know how to unshare you.
Okay, so we'll just not.
Let me see. No, see,
Sorry, it was on my other screen. I have double screen here.
There you go. There you go. Okay, any questions? Okay. I mean, it's, I guess the question is, what's the nafka mina in all this? In a certain sense. In other words, no, I mean, I know, like the famous Rambam, of course. I'm just asking if you like.
Where it's learned out from?
No, yeah. In other words, the mindset doesn't really, it's just interesting, but it doesn't really matter as far as I can tell. I mean, yeah, you want to say non-Jew who's mechuyev in it, but the mindset, I'm not sure what the.
I think the philosophy of the halacha and development of the mitzvah itself has implications to other cases. Will it have we posit, mal v'lo para is not considered mila, but the Binyan Sion's question, right? He doesn't relate it to this. I recently heard another. I think it was quoted in the name of Vasher Weiss, but I didn't see it inside, so I don't want to sign it myself to that. But what about somebody who, forget mila, he wants to go ahead and convert. So he's learning about Shabbat. Okay, he's a non-Jew. He's learning about Shabbat. Can he keep Shabbat?
Yeah, so that's a machloket.
Right. So if you take the approach that it's not like a part of the pun, but it's not like a cut here. You're a non-Jew and you're a Jew, but there's an evolution to it. He's starting to nichnas the bris. He's not there yet. So perhaps he can also keep Shabbat. Perhaps he can also learn Torah because he's not learning it b'Torah's ger goal. He's learning b'Torah somebody who wants to convert. So it's an evolutionary process. I agree with you that whether we learn it out from here or there might not have direct implications to the mitzvah of Mila or how we do it, but it might have meta halachic implications when you extrapolate it to other. I
mean, again, yeah, I would have to do a little bit with, what's the status of the Torah before Matan Torah, really, which is philosophically interesting. I don't know. Do you know, does anybody argue on the Rambam? I've asked other people before. The Rambam, it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's famous only, people know it's in like Parshat Mishnah and Chulin. Who in the world would normally come across Parshat Mishnah and Chulin? You know what I'm saying? Like people know it because we've made it famous or semi-famous. But I don't know, does anybody argue on the Rambam?
I mean, people think Parshat Mishnah for the Rambam is only philosophy because, that's the only ones that people learn.
Who today learns Parshat Mishnah of the Rambam? I mean, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein thought it was the most important, I think, Parshanut on the Mishnah, but that was in the Partanur, and then the Kahati, that knocked everybody off. So,
does anyone argue on the Rambam in terms of?
I'd say that it's not true. The Mitzvot don't have to emanate from Sinai. In other words, his formulation in Parshat Mishnah and Chulin, which is very stark and very strong. Nothing. We don't do Mila because Abraham. We don't do Gita Nesha because Yaakov. I don't know. I don't think that's the way Jews think. I think if you ask a typical Jew, even your typical learned Jew, why do you do Brit Mila? He's not going to tell you because God told Moshe at Har Sinai. He's going to tell you because Avraham Avinu, Kasher Tzivah to Elohim, as the Gemara in Kiddushin says. That's what they're going to say. I think. I don't know. I'm asking what you think.
If they learn the Yerushalmi, so then they'll say, "What do you mean? You watch me?" I hear.
Yeah. No, I'm just you're not aware of anybody who directly argues on the Rambam because I'm not either. That's okay. Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody. Okay, please God, we'll see you soon. We'll see you in shul soon, and hopefully we'll see everybody else even sooner on online. Please God, my shir tomorrow morning on the Siddur, 9:00. We should finish Eza Makoma, and it's been I think, and whatever, going through slowly the Siddur, very meaningful book that we don't study often enough. And as like I say, I'm gaining a tremendous amount from giving the shir. That's tomorrow at 9 a.m. Rabbi Liebtag at 11:15 on Sunday will be starting doing 2 parts on Tehillim and Magid, and continue really through the week. Next week, most of the shirim will be Pesach related. Mark Shapir's regular class Monday night on Reform, the traditional response Reform, I guess, will not be, and I guess my class on the Siddur will not be about the last of Ezim Makom and ends at Korban Pesach. So we will have an opportunity to tie it into Pesach a little bit. And okay, we look forward to learning with you. Alan was asking about our post-Pesach schedule. All right, who's thinking about post-Pesach now? People it's not even Rosh Chodesh yet. So anyway, so please God, that will be coming up soon. And okay, we look forward to learning with you, and please invite a friend. And thank you very much. Laila Tov and Shabbat Shalom. And thank you again, Rabbi Aviner. Laila Tov.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov, yes. A triple header this Shabbos, 3 Sephirah Torah. For those who haven't been to shul recently, I forgot myself it was 3 Sephirah Torah. I'm thinking 2. Oh, no, forget, like Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Parshat Chodesh.
This is
So,
called Cinnabon.
I'm sorry. Anyways, all right. Enjoy, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.